at approximately 7:45 p.m. on Sunday, November 12, 2024. Three gunshots echoed through the typically quiet neighborhood of Pine Circle in Alpine, Texas. The sounds originated from the Walters family home, where Pastor Patrick Walters, his son, Richmond, and daughter Lonetta had gathered around the dining table for their regular Sunday dinner following evening church service. According to police reports, the first responders arrived within minutes of receiving multiple 911 calls from alarmed neighbors. What they discovered inside the home would shock the small West Texas community for years to come. We entered to find three victims with fatal gunshot wounds positioned around the dining table, stated one officer. Food was still warm on their plates. Each victim had sustained a single gunshot wound to the chest. The precision of the shots suggested a calculated attack rather than a crime of passion. Pastor Patrick Walters was found slumped over in his chair at the head of the table, while his children, Richmond and Lunetta, remained in their seats, their bodies still upright, suggesting they had little time to react. The Bible that Patrick habitually kept beside him during family meals lay open, spattered with blood. The first officers on scene encountered Brianna Walters, the pastor's wife and mother of the deceased children, in the garage. According to court documents, she was attempting to start her vehicle when police detained her. A 9mm handgun registered in her name was recovered from her purse, later confirmed through ballistics to be the murder weapon. She was eerily calm. As news spread through Alpine, a town of fewer than 6,000 residents, the immediate question on everyone's mind was, why? Why would Brianna Walters, the respected wife of a beloved pastor and mother of two accomplished teenagers, commit such a horrific act against her own family? The investigation would soon uncover a web of secrets spanning three generations of the Walters family. Secrets so devastating that Brianna apparently believed murder was preferable to their exposure. In the months before that fateful Sunday evening in November, the Walters family had been the picture of respectability in their community. To those who attended their church, the Walters represented everything a Christian family should be: devout, successful, and seemingly perfect. Pastor Patrick Walters had led his congregation for nearly 15 years, taking over from his father, Brandon, who had stepped down but remained an influential elder in the church. His congregants described him as a man who practiced what he preached. At least, that's what they believed. Pastor Patrick would spend hours with families in crisis, recalled a church elder during police interviews. That's what makes all this so hard to comprehend. Brianna Walters had married Patrick in her early 20s. Shortly after he'd taken over the pulpit, she was active in every aspect of church life. She always had time for everyone, said a longtime church member. If you needed advice or prayer, Brianna would drop everything to help. She seemed so devoted to Patrick and those children. Their son, Richmond, was a first-year pre-seminary student at Sul Ross State University, remaining close to home at his parents' urging. He was following in his father's footsteps, tall and charismatic like his grandfather, Brandon. He was popular among the congregation's young adults. Lynetta, their high-achieving 17-year-old daughter, led the church youth choir and maintained perfect grades at Alpine High School. She was quieter than her brother, but respected for her maturity and dedication. What the congregation didn't see was how carefully curated this image truly was. Behind the polished exterior of Sunday services and community events, the Walters family was fractured in ways few could imagine. According to Joseph Walters, Patrick's younger brother, who had moved to Houston years earlier, the family dynamics had always been strained. Brandon was impossible to please. Joseph told investigators after the murders, Patrick spent his whole life trying to measure up to our father's expectations. That pressure created cracks nobody outside the family could see. Those cracks had begun to widen in the weeks before the murders. What the church members, friends, and even the Walters' children didn't know was that the foundation of their family was built on secrets so devastating that Patrick Walters would soon discover the truth and pay for that knowledge with his life. The investigation into the Walters family murders took a disturbing turn when Virginia Walters, Patrick's mother, provided investigators with a worn leather journal she had maintained for nearly 20 years. The journal, later entered into evidence as Exhibit 17B, contained meticulously documented accounts of Brandon Walters' inappropriate behavior with female church members dating back to the early 2000s. Brandon wasn't just a pastor, Virginia explained in her official statement to detectives. He was a predator who used his position to pursue vulnerable women. I started documenting everything after the third incident because I knew nobody would believe me without proof. According to court records, Brandon Walters had been asked to step down from his pastoral position following multiple complaints from female congregants. Though the official announcement cited health concerns, internal church documents revealed that church elders had confronted Brandon about his inappropriate relationships with choir members and women seeking counseling. Virginia's journal detailed at least 7 different women who had confided in her about Brandon's advances. Each entry included dates, locations, and specific behaviors that painted a disturbing picture of systematic predation. Despite this evidence, Brandon remained a respected figure in the community, his reputation largely intact. The most damning revelation came from Brianna Walters' personal correspondence discovered on her laptop after her arrest. Emails between Brianna and a close friend from college revealed that her relationship with Brandon began just 3 months after her marriage to Patrick. He cornered me in the storage room after everyone had left. Brianna wrote in one email, said he could tell I wasn't satisfied with Patrick, said he could show me what a real man was like. I should have been disgusted, but I didn't say no. What began as a single encounter evolved into a calculated affair that spanned years. According to Virginia's testimony, Brandon would often create reasons to visit the house when Patrick was away at pastoral conferences or counseling sessions. Cell phone records showed hundreds of text messages between Brandon and Brianna, often exchanged late at night or during times when Patrick was known to be occupied with church duties. The relationship took a dramatic turn when Brianna discovered she was pregnant. DNA evidence recovered during the investigation would later confirm what Virginia had suspected for years. Richmond Walters was not Patrick's biological son, but Brandon's. I confronted her when she announced the pregnancy, Virginia stated in her deposition. She didn't deny it. She just looked at me and said, "Patrick will never know the difference." The coldness in her eyes, I'll never forget it. Patrick Walters, by all accounts, had no suspicion that his firstborn son was not his biological child. Friends and family described his joy at becoming a father, his dedication to raising Richmond, and his pride as the boy grew to resemble his grandfather, a resemblance that tragically held the truth in plain sight. The affair between Brandon and Brianna continued intermittently for years, always carefully concealed from Patrick, who remained devoted to both his ministry and his family, unaware of the betrayal occurring under his own roof. While the revelation of Brandon Walters' relationship with his daughter-in-law sent shock waves through the investigation, detectives soon uncovered an even more troubling development. The second layer of betrayal came from within the immediate family. Patrick's younger brother, Joseph Walters. According to court records, Joseph Walters had moved to Houston in 2005, allegedly to pursue better job opportunities. However, interviews with former employers revealed a pattern of unstable employment and increasingly erratic behavior. A background check showed 3 misdemeanor charges for disorderly conduct and a DUI between 2005 and 2010. The turning point in Joseph's relationship with the family occurred in late 2006. Cell phone records recovered during the investigation showed a dramatic increase in calls between Joseph and Brianna around this time. Initially, investigators suspected a romantic relationship, but the truth proved far more calculated. According to a 10-page letter Joseph wrote to Patrick from prison, he had discovered Brianna and Brandon's affair by accident. I came back to Alpine unannounced that weekend to borrow money from Dad. Joseph wrote, I walked into the storage shed behind his house looking for tools and found them together. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't crying. She was a willing participant. Police recovered a series of text messages from Brianna's old phone backup that corroborated this timeline. Joseph's blackmail was explicit. According to his confession letter, he initially demanded $10,000 to keep silent when Brianna claimed she couldn't access that much money without Patrick noticing. Joseph suggested an alternative form of payment. He told me, either I sleep with him once or he'd tell Patrick everything. Brianna admitted in her post-arrest interview, I made a calculated decision. One night with Joseph seemed like a small price to keep my marriage and reputation intact. The encounter took place at a motel outside Alpine while Patrick was at a pastoral conference in Dallas. What neither Brianna nor Joseph anticipated was the pregnancy that resulted from this coerced encounter. 2 months later, Brianna discovered she was pregnant with Lynetta. I knew immediately it wasn't Patrick's. Brianna stated in her confession, we hadn't been intimate in weeks due to his travel schedule, but I convinced him the timing worked. He never questioned it. Joseph's demands stopped after the encounter, but his life continued to spiral downward. Court records show that he was arrested for his involvement in a convenience store robbery that resulted in the clerk's death some years after his affair with Brianna. Though Joseph wasn't the shooter, his participation earned him a 15-year prison sentence. The irony wasn't lost on me. Joseph wrote in his confession letter, I helped create a child I would never know while blackmailing my sister-in-law over a child that wasn't my brother's. We're all going to hell for what we did. To Patrick, prison visitation logs show that neither Patrick nor Brianna ever visited Joseph during his incarceration. It wasn't until his 8th year in prison following near fatal stabbing by another inmate that Joseph's conscience finally compelled him to write the confession letter that would eventually reach his brother. The letter obtained by investigators from Patrick's home office following the murders methodically detailed both Joseph's blackmail of Brianna and the earlier affair between Brianna and Brandon Walters. Joseph included specific dates, locations, and details that could be independently verified. According to prison records, Joseph mailed the letter through the prison's regular mail system. Delivery confirmation showed it reached the Walters residence. Patrick's bank records revealed that 2 days later he purchased DNA testing kits from an online genetic testing company. Detectives recovered the DNA test results from Patrick's home office. The files confirmed that Patrick Walters was not the biological father of either Richmond or Lynetta. The probability of paternity was less than 0.01% for both children. Cell phone records showed that following receipt of the DNA results, Patrick Walters made 3 calls to his brother at the state prison. Each call lasted the maximum allowed 15 minutes. Prison recording Logs indicated that these calls were unusually emotional, with Patrick repeatedly asking Joseph for more details about what he had witnessed. According to Virginia Walters's testimony, Patrick had become increasingly withdrawn from family gatherings, finding excuses to avoid Sunday dinners with his parents. He couldn't look at his father, Virginia stated. When they were in the same room, Patrick would physically position himself as far from Brandon as possible. On the evening of November 10th, 2024, 2 days before the murders, Patrick was called away to visit an ailing church member. Security camera footage from the Walters property showed him leaving in haste, departing directly from his home office where he had been reviewing documents. Camera footage also captured Brianna entering his office approximately 11 minutes after his departure. According to her later confession to police, this was when she discovered both Joseph's letter and the DNA test results, which Patrick had left open on his desk. Phone records show Brianna made 3 calls that night, one to a hardware store inquiring about their hours, one to a chemical supply company that went unanswered, and one to her children asking them to come to dinner on Sunday no matter what. A receipt recovered from Brianna's purse revealed a $420 cash purchase at an unlicensed chemical supply store in neighboring Marfa, Texas. The proprietor, who later testified under immunity, confirmed selling her a colorless, odorless compound typically used in laboratory settings that becomes lethal in sufficient dosage. She specifically asked for something that wouldn't alter the taste of food, the supplier stated. In his deposition, she claimed it was for science demonstration. The poison attempt failed due to a critical miscalculation. Toxicology reports indicated that the substance Brianna purchased required an empty stomach to achieve lethal effects. The forensic analysis of the meal pot, roast with potatoes, vegetables, and dinner rolls, revealed that the heavy, starchy food neutralized much of the compound's potency. Security camera footage from inside the Walters home obtained through a search warrant show Brianna repeatedly checking her watch during dinner, then excusing herself after approximately 18 minutes when it became clear her primary plan had failed. Brianna returned to the dining room, the gun concealed behind the folds of her dress. The autopsy report confirmed that all 3 victims were shot from a standing position approximately 4 feet away from the table. Ballistics analysis revealed that Richmond, seated to Patrick's right, was shot second. The autopsy showed defensive wounds on his forearms, indicating he had raised his arms in protection. Lunetta, seated across from him, was the final victim. According to the medical examiner's report, all 3 died within minutes from catastrophic blood loss. Following the shooting, surveillance footage showed Brianna wiping the gun with a napkin before placing it in her purse. She then proceeded directly to the garage where officers apprehended her. Minutes later, news of the Walters family murders spread rapidly through Alpine, Texas. According to police records, Virginia Walters, Patrick's mother, was notified of the tragedy at 8:37 p.m. She wasn't in her residence when the news hit her. She collapsed upon hearing the news, requiring medical attention from paramedics on standby. Brandon Walters, meanwhile, had been informed of the crime earlier through a friend's call. In his residence, neighbors reported hearing a single gunshot echoed from the bathroom. After forcing entry, officers discovered Brandon Walters dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, a .38 revolver still in his hand. A handwritten note recovered from the bathroom counter contained only 5 words. "I created this. I'm sorry." Forensic analysis confirmed it was Brandon Walters' handwriting, though the brevity of the message left investigators with more questions than answers. Virginia Walters was hospitalized following the double trauma of her son's murder and husband's suicide. Hospital records indicated she suffered a mild heart attack upon hearing about Brandon's death. During her 5-day hospital stay, she provided investigators with what would become the most comprehensive explanation of the family's dark history. Virginia Walters' statement was approximately 8 hours long, spread across 3 days. According to the transcripts of Virginia's statement, she had known about Brandon's affair with Brianna since it began 3 months after her marriage to Patrick. I caught them together in Brandon's study, she stated. It wasn't the first time he'd pursued a younger woman. He had a pattern with female church members that had already caused problems. Virginia revealed that Brandon had been forced to step down from his pastoral position after multiple women came forward with complaints of inappropriate behavior. The church covered it up, she explained, called it health issues to save face. But at least 5 women had reported him for making advances during counseling sessions. When asked why she hadn't exposed the affair between Brandon and Brianna, Virginia's answer revealed the extent of the abuse within the family. He threatened to kill me if I ever told Patrick, she stated. He showed me the gun he kept in his nightstand and said he'd make it look like a break-in. After many years of marriage, I knew he wasn't bluffing. Hospital records noted Virginia's elevated stress levels during this portion of her testimony. According to the attending nurse's notes, she required sedation after describing the threats in detail. Virginia also confirmed she had suspected Brandon was Richmond's biological father. The timing of the pregnancy, the way Brandon doted on the boy, the physical resemblances, that became more obvious as Richmond grew older. I knew, but I couldn't say anything. The most shocking revelation came when Virginia described her discovery of Joseph's involvement. According to Virginia, she had attempted to hint to Patrick about the children's true parentage on multiple occasions. I would say things like how Richmond had his grandfather's eyes, or how Lunetta reminded me of Joseph at that age. I hoped Patrick would start asking questions, but he never caught on. He trusted his wife completely. 3 days after completing her statement, Virginia Walters suffered a massive heart attack in her hospital room. Despite resuscitation efforts, she was pronounced dead. The medical examiner attributed her death to stress-induced cardiac arrest, officially listing it as a secondary consequence of the homicides. After a 3-week trial, Brianna Walters was found guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder. According to court transcripts, she remained expressionless as the judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In my 22 years on the bench, I have never encountered a case with such calculated cruelty, the judge stated. During sentencing, the defendant executed her family not out of passion, but out of self-preservation. Prosecutors presented 47 pieces of evidence, including the security footage, DNA tests, Joseph's confession letter, and Virginia's deathbed testimony. Defense attorneys attempted to argue diminished capacity due to psychological trauma, but the jury deliberated for only 6 hours before returning a unanimous guilty verdict. The Alpine community struggled to process the tragedy. Church attendance dropped by 68% according to local reports, with many former congregants unable to reconcile their faith with the horrors that had occurred within the Walters family. How do we trust anything anymore? Questioned a former church member. These people were our moral guides, our examples of godly living. Now we learn it was all built on lies and murder. Questions remained unanswered despite the conviction. Why had Virginia never found the courage to reveal the truth? Even when threatened, how had Patrick failed to notice the patterns of behavior in his own home? Could the tragedy have been prevented if Brandon had been exposed years earlier? In her only public statement delivered through her attorney, Brianna Walters offered no apology, claiming instead that no one truly understands what I endured for decades. Prison records indicated she refused all visitors, including counselors and clergy. The Walters family murders became a dividing line in the town's history before and after the Sunday when Brianna Walters picked up a gun and ended 3 lives to protect a secret that in the end could not stay